I lived in a small Midwestern town with a population of about 400, and it seemed like everyone, or at least a group of people, was messing with the women in the town. This must have started around 6 or 7 years ago, when I was about 13. My grandpa has owned a small house just off the highway, right smack dab in the middle of town, for over 30 years now. Around COVID times, my aunt moved in with him, and since my grandpa's a truck driver, he's gone a good chunk of the time. I would stay with my aunt quite a bit. We had no Wi-Fi, so most of our pastime was spent coloring, listening to music, or telling scary stories, mostly family stories. One night while my aunt was alone, she said she heard metal jingling, but ignored it. A few days later, my grandpa came home to find the lock on his cellar door in pieces on the ground, as if it had been cut by bolt cutters. My aunt concluded that this must have been what she had heard. The only other big thing that happened was when my aunt once heard her dog, a huge mix of German Shepherd and Great Pyrenees, barking uncontrollably outside. When she went to check, a man was standing over the fenced-in backyard, and he took off running when she went outside. Around a year later, my aunt moved out for a while, and nothing seemed to happen at that house, at least not that we know of. However, over at my house, this is when things first began happening to me. My parents worked nights, leaving me and my 2 younger brothers alone. Their sleep schedule would impact ours a lot, leading us to stay up until early morning often. We would hear the occasional taps on the window and footsteps outside. Twice, things got bad at my window. Specifically, one night, someone slapped the window near my head while I was sleeping. My parents would either look outside or call a male family member to come drive by and look around our house if they were at work, but they never saw anything. This all lasted 3 years, until I was about 16 and my aunt moved back in with my grandpa. Things were okay for about a year, and then everything started back up again. Once, about 2 summers ago, when I was 17, I was half asleep in my room around 2 a.m. when someone started banging on the front door. I have never actually heard the police bang on a door, but it sounded just like it's shown in the movies. My dog was going crazy, so I knew I wasn't the only one who heard it. It was late enough for me to choose to ignore it and try to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. So I got up, and as I was about to step into our kitchen, it happened again. By that point, I knew that if it were the police or someone in need of help, they would have said something, but it was dead silent, apart from the banging, the dog, and my heartbeat. I sat on the floor and called my stepdad, asking for advice. Then my brother lazily walked out of his room, asking what was going on. He took my dog and answered the door, only to be faced with nothing. Of course, last summer I got into the habit of sleeping on the couch when my parents were at work, because my friend and I would camp out there. However, one night when it was just me, I woke up around 6 a.m. to both the front and back doors completely wide open for no reason. None of our animals had run out, amazingly, so I had to conclude that they had just recently been opened. This happened a separate time, where I unfortunately didn't wake up, and my mom came home from work in the morning to the doors blown open and all our pets in the yard having to be rounded up. This past year has been horrible for my aunt too. When she's been alone, she's been woken in the middle of the night to a man holding a flashlight in her window, and she even had a small red dot hit her chest from the same window. She came home one night and let her dogs out, and when she did, 2 major things happened at once. She saw a man start taking off from behind a tree, and her dog started eating something that wasn't there before. Her dog can be slightly aggressive when it comes to food, so although she tried to take it, the dog ended up eating it before she could. The dog later acted very tired. My aunt was worried, believing whoever was running off from behind the fence had put Benadryl in a burger patty for her dog, trying to put her to sleep. The dog was probably her biggest protection when she was alone. Another day, she was painting her closet and opened the back door to let the fumes out in daylight. She never saw anything, but suddenly the dog jumped up, and she could hear her nails hitting the kitchen tile as the dog ran toward the bedroom, then turned around and took off outside, growling and barking at something. Many points in my aunt's backyard fence are leaning so far back that it appears as though someone has been bending it to crawl over it, right where the camera conveniently doesn't point. But the most important thing from the security camera was one night when my aunt was pulling into the driveway. There was a man crouched behind bushes, rolling down the hill out of my aunt's sight as she got out. This was the only time a person has shown up on the cameras. However, it's not the first time they've triggered the motion sensors. It's happened quite a bit, but they're always just out of view before something happens. Based on all this information, I originally thought this was what was happening to our family for some odd reason. But upon asking some other women in the area, it's not just us. Other women, when they're home alone, have been experiencing similar things, and it's almost always when they're home alone. A woman close to my aunt even mentioned someone squatting and stealing her food at night. I'm not sure why it's happening, who's doing it, or what's going to happen when they inevitably are caught by someone, but it's scary nonetheless. It also seems to be ramping up as time goes by. The latest couple of incidents involve genuine attempted break-ins, which never happened in the earlier years of these strange events in our small town. It was 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday night. I was getting back from a road trip with my boyfriend. We had just reached my home state, and my car was almost out of gas. We were on the freeway, driving through a boring stretch of my state that's mainly cornfields, little neighborhoods, and the occasional store. We Google mapped a gas station that was seemingly right off the freeway. Now it was dark outside. It had been kind of stormy all day, but at that time it was only a bit windy, with some sprinkles here and there. We pulled off an exit I'd never been to before. The gas station was farther than it seemed on Google Maps, and I was getting really close to completely running out of gas. We drove for about 5 minutes on long stretches of road, passing a church, some houses, but mainly empty land. We got to the hub of the small town, and I'm not even sure what city we were in. I saw a gas station up ahead, but it was not the one we had Google mapped. I had to stop, though. I had no choice, because I would not have made it to the other gas station. This was a small town with one main intersection. We passed some side streets with a small neighborhood. We did not see a single car or any people walking. Pulling up to the town portion, it felt creepy. The town had old buildings and 1 or 2 streetlights. We pulled up to the gas station. It was small with 4 gas pumps. All the lights illuminating the pumps were flickering. I immediately got the creeps, but I could not go any further without getting gas. I stepped out of my car and put my card in the gas pump. The pump instructed me to go inside and get the attendant to pay for gas. I walked inside and there were only 2 people, the attendant and a woman buying a birthday card. She was shuffling at the counter, finishing her transaction. The woman greeted me, but the attendant did not. While waiting, I suddenly heard very loud sirens, like tornado sirens starting to go off. I started looking outside. It was a bit windy, but not gale force winds. I tried looking at the sky, but I couldn't see anything. I looked over at the 2 people in the gas station, trying to take cues from them on where to hide or what to do. They had no reaction. The woman said something about how annoying it would be to live near the sirens, and the attendant agreed. She said bye to me for some reason and walked out. I wanted to panic with the sirens still going off, but I didn't know what was happening. While finishing the transaction, I asked the attendant what it was for. He looked at me like I had 4 heads and said, "An emergency." He was eerily calm, with no reaction to the supposed emergency. I walked outside and got my gas, and the sirens were still going off. I kept waiting to hear emergency sirens like ambulances or police, but heard nothing. I didn't see a single car drive by, a single person walking, or anything at all. It was eerie because the sirens were going off essentially right next door, so I logically should have seen some sort of emergency vehicles. I know small towns test their sirens once a month, but that late at night didn't make sense to me. I got in my car. My boyfriend asked what it was, and I just said, "Nothing," and then sped off toward the freeway. I still don't know why it was so eerie, but I haven't been able to get it out of my head. I was living in a small town in Oklahoma with my mother at a small lake house, and I was probably 12 or 13 years old at the time. One night, I was sleeping in my room when I randomly and abruptly woke up for no reason. This was not normal for me, and I felt very uneasy. The only sound I could hear was my mother's snoring from the next room over on the couch. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but my need to use the bathroom was growing more urgent, so I grudgingly forced myself to head that way. The bathroom was on the other side of the house, around a corner, past the kitchen, and finally down a long hallway on the right. After I made the trip and finished my business, I flipped off the light switch and started heading back to bed. That's when I heard the distinct click of the light switch, and I saw the glow of the bathroom light in the hallway behind me, where I had just been. Terrified, I slowly turned around just to witness the light in the bathroom start clicking on and off. Finally, it shut completely off, leaving the hallway in darkness. My eyes began to make out a white shape near the end of the hall. It was around my size and crouched on the floor. At this point, I was frozen to the spot as my mind realized that no one else had come home except for my mom and myself. Then the white shape began whispering in a quiet man's voice, "Help me, I'm lost." I remember wanting to scream for my mom, but I couldn't, and instead I barely said, "No." This thing then started running at me on what sounded like all fours. I quickly ran through the kitchen and around the corner before running to my sleeping mother, shaking her awake. I remember saying, "It's coming, it's coming," and my mother's eyes going from dazed to alert in an instant. She asked me what was going on, and I saw her eyes look over my shoulder before she screamed. Remembering her scream still makes my blood run cold. Never had I heard pure terror like that in my life. Even to this day. She grabbed me by the arms and pulled me into my room and slammed the door. She held me in her arms with her back pressed against the door. As we listened, it sounded like this thing was running in circles in the kitchen. We could hear hands and feet slapping against the tiles. The kitchen had a sliding glass door to the outside, which sounded like it was thrown open and then slammed shut. We sat there horrified until daybreak. I was sent to my grandmother's in the next town over for a while after that, and never set foot in that house again. Years later, my mother told me that the next day she went walking around the property after the incident. When she did, she came across a small burial site that was heavily overgrown, with 3 headstones that each belonged to children from the early 1900s. Upon some research, my mother found that this was our small town's first original cemetery, which only had a few people recorded as being buried there and had been forgotten, partially sunken into the earth. It freaks me out because what I heard that night was a man's voice, but it was so unnatural. My mom still will not tell me what she saw behind me or what it was that made her scream. I was a truck driver for years and have a few creepy stories from my time on the road, but one that sticks out happened a long time ago, back in the late 1990s. I was driving a semi-truck across the country on another long trip. I don't even remember exactly what state I was in, but it was nighttime, and I was on a quiet highway, pretty late at night. There were not many other cars on the road. It was a typical 2-lane highway with mostly woods and wildlands surrounding me on both sides. Occasionally, I would pass an exit that led to a small town or a truck stop. I was going to be driving for several more hours before I planned to stop. Back then, my hours could be crazy at times. As I was driving, I noticed a few cars come up behind me. It was weird because I remember thinking how quiet it had been, and now there were suddenly not 1, not 2, but 3 cars approaching. Still, it seemed like just a random coincidence to me. I was in the right lane when one of the cars moved into the left lane to pass me. After it passed, it merged back into the right lane in front of me. At the same time, another car went into the left lane to pass. But the car that had just passed me and was now in front of me started slowing down. This annoyed me because I had to slow down too. I had been going about 65 miles per hour, and now I had to slow to around 55. But it didn't stop there. The car kept getting slower. I could see it braking. There was nothing ahead on the road that would cause us to slow down. The road was completely straight. No cop cars waiting for speeders, no animals crossing, nothing. The other strange thing was that the car in the left lane, which was about even with me, did not speed up. That car slowed down with us as well. Meanwhile, the third car behind me didn't even try to pass. It was like they were boxing me in. There was nothing I could do unless I wanted to run over the car in front of me. We kept going slower and slower. All the cars around me were just regular-looking sedans. As we slowed nearly to a stop, I pulled over to the side of the road, wondering what was going on. When I stopped, all 3 cars stopped as well. I had a bad feeling about it. The car that had been next to me pulled over in front of me. next to the other car, and the car behind me pulled over directly behind me. Then I saw the front doors of the two cars in front of me open. A man got out of each one. Both were wearing dark clothing and winter hats. They immediately started speed walking toward me. One guy went to each side of my cab without saying a word. They both tried opening my doors, but they were locked. Then they started banging on the windows and doors. I didn't know what they wanted, but this was no way to approach me. I yelled at them to leave me alone, but they obviously didn't care. When they continued trying to get in and pounding on the truck, they left me no choice. I put my truck into gear and started driving forward. Obviously, my truck took a little time to get going, but it was very powerful, much more powerful than those little cars the men were driving. I moved forward and ran into one of the cars. As I gained momentum, I pushed it forward and out of the way. I also scraped the other car parked next to it, but I didn't care. The men stayed at my cab for the first few seconds as we started moving. Then they jumped off. One of the guys ran back to his car, and the other had to jump out of the way. After I pushed the cars aside, I just kept driving and went even faster. Two of the guys got back into their cars and drove right up next to me again. The other guy couldn't get up to speed because of the damage to his car. They tried doing the same thing to me again, but I kept going at my pace. When the guy in front of me slowed down, I simply ran into him. Then he moved to my left and tried to run me off the road. He swerved right in front of me, but I didn't move. He briefly hit me and then backed away, realizing his car was no match for my large truck. Then all the cars slowed down and were quickly out of my sight. I wasn't even going that fast. I continued driving until I made it to the next truck stop. From there, I called the cops and reported the incident to my boss as well. The truck wasn't damaged. Too bad for them. Thankfully, I never found out if the cops located any of those guys, and I don't know what would have happened if I had opened the doors for them. At this point, I'm not quite certain what to make of this, but it was most certainly one of the more eerie things I've experienced over the last couple of years. At the time of the encounter, I was visiting my grandfather in a dusty, dying small town somewhere in the northwestern part of Texas. The town in question is one of those old-fashioned places where everyone knows everyone. All you really need to know about it is that, due to the recent abandonment by petrol companies, it's been on a steady decline toward desertion. The only people left are either old folks bent on going down with their ship or people who simply cannot afford to live anywhere else. The story begins deep in the dead of night. I'm not fully certain what time it was, but it was late. I was the last person in the house who was still awake. I spent the weekend-long trip committing to on and off photography shoots around town. I was interested in documenting the rusted remnants of a once prosperous place. Knowing that the sky would likely be brilliantly lit so far from any major cities, I figured I'd step out onto the porch and see if I could get a few decent shots. I wasn't even 5 seconds into my photo shoot before a relatively junky-looking car came screeching down the road with its headlights on and music blaring. The house isn't too far from a corner, so unsurprisingly, the car came to a stop at the cross street. This is where it gets odd. Rather than yielding and then resuming its route after a short stop, the car stayed in place, and the driver turned off their headlights. I just continued to take pictures while the car sat there with the music blaring and the headlights off. It took a minute to register, but I began to feel watched. So a bit confused and somewhat worried, I rushed back into the house. Immediately after I closed the door, the headlights of the car came back on and it went screeching off. After I left for my city, my grandpa notified me that he had seen people in cars watching and keeping tabs on his house at all hours of the day. I'm well aware that the drug trade is somewhat prevalent in this town, but perhaps this was unrelated. I'm wondering if that was something I missed. I didn't hear anyone get out of the car after I went back inside. My best guess is that they saw me taking pictures out there in the dead of night and suspected that I was onto them. If so, should I be worried about having accidentally put my grandfather's house on their radar? Or maybe I'm overthinking the whole encounter. I head back to visit my grandfather often, so maybe I'll learn more, or ideally not see that car again when I'm visiting.